Welcome to another edition of Ask Isaiah. It's your host Isaiah Rhodes, and on today's episode, this is about NBA milestones. I'm here with my guest Frank Teah, one of the biggest NBA historians that I know, and we both have the same attitude in terms of watching basketball for over 20 years. So I feel like this conversation, especially in light of everything that's been happening in terms of LeBron James being the first player to get to 30,000 points, 8,000 rebounds, 8,000 assists, with Dirk Nowitzki reaching a 31,000 point plateau, and with Carmelo Anthony just 5 points away from passing Jerry West in all-time scoring. I think with all that adding up, this is a good conversation to bring in Frank in terms of how the game has evolved since you've been watching, and what is the trajectory of future players as well. So based off what you've seen, what are your thoughts about how the game is evolving, and what have you seen from these particular players?
In terms of the game evolving, I think that the ceiling that we once have for players has been like destroyed. Most of the time, if a guy does a 17 to 20 his first year, you typically say he probably won't peak past 27, 28. But now you have guys younger getting 26, 27 by year 4, 5, and 6. Like, whoa. Like, for example, Giannis, right? Who typically I thought was a good player, but I didn't know how he'd peak. He's at 28 already. So I think, like, the window that once a ceiling for certain players, you knew they'd be good, but now they've broken that, right? So I never saw a Kawhi Leonard last year getting 26, right? So small things like that. I think the game is played faster like it was in the 80s, but I think because of the outside shot, players have been able to, like, push past the margin they would have in the past. So, yeah, it's weird, but it's also great at the same time. Like, you can no longer define them as, like, I would have once said that a player like Devin Booker will probably never get over 26. I think he's someone who could probably get 28, 29 points per game one day. I mean, and no, he probably won't go down as an all-time, great scorer, because typically those numbers are like all-time elite numbers. But it's just weird because now you have guys like who will do that regularly, and you probably still wouldn't consider them to be like in that legion of scorers. So it's just interesting.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up in terms of how the outside shot has changed, because there's a lot of conversations that we've had prior where we discuss great scorers who aren't necessarily good shooters, but they're able to go on scoring binges and make up for a lot of their shooting deficiencies.
Yep.
One example would be Allen Iverson, or even a Russell Westbrook, great scorers who aren't necessarily good shooters, but because of their confidence, they're able to make up for that. Well, now we're seeing with levels of efficiency going up in terms of aesthetics. We talk about LeBron and how he's able to consistently be in the 55 percentile range in terms of field goal percentage. But if you look at his three-point percentage, as he's gotten older, his volume of threes have increased, while also him being able to still maintain paint performance as well. So in terms of a player like LeBron, who's routinely underappreciated as a scorer, for him to get to 30,000, what have you seen from his game as it evolved?
You know what? This would be a discussion we have until we die, because forever his scoring has been just underappreciated. Like, and it's weird to understand why. So this is a guy who was at 19 averaged 27 points, right? In any era. And my good friend from Nike, Tron, brought this up. Like, I don't care if you get 35 free throws per game, right? If you put the ball in the basket, more than someone else, you're an elite scorer. So it's just weird that folks have this notion that maybe like the arsenal isn't as crisp as some guys like a Melo or Durant, but if the raw number is more, your best scorer. So AI, right? Allen Iverson, how did he score? He typically got to the line, got to the basket, or if the outside shot was going, he'd be a problem. You have a guy like Chauncey Billups, right, who will never score over 22 points, right? He could post, he could finish, he gets to the line and shoot in the mid to high 80s, and he's also a great outside shooter. You would never call Chauncey Billups a best scorer than Allen Iverson because the number is in there. So I think LeBron is in that same vein. This is a guy for his career, 15 years strong now, averages 27 a game. There's only two players who've done that besides him. You know what I mean? I mean, there's some guy like AI whose career has tailed off, for other things. But only a few guys who's been in that 27 range for the career, and he's still doing it. He's still at, right now, it's 20 games out, and he's at 27 a game, basically 26.7. So I just think it's amazing that he might end up scoring in a few years 35,000, right, and breaking the record. And people will still say he was an elite scorer. If you ask me, LeBron's a top 10 scorer of all time. I don't think you can argue that. If you add in his playoff numbers and season numbers, I think he's probably a top 6 or 7 scorer ever on perimeter. A better scorer than someone like a T-Mac who gets praised for that. And it's just amazing how he's been able to go with the time. So the outside shot, the people claim aren't great. He's been over, if you take away the first few years, he's been over 36, right? The league average is 35. So this is a guy who throws with all you can shoot. Right now, he takes 5 attempts, and he's at 36%. Earlier in the year, he was at, you know how I feel, he was at 40%, right? I thought he could do it. Mid-season, LeBron always tapers off, but I think he'll end back around 37%. I just think it's been lovely to watch how he's added to his game, and regardless of how hard he's worked, folks have still said that he's not an elite scorer, where he's probably a top 4 scorer in the NBA right now, and he's been that way for the past 15 years. He's been either anywhere from 1 to 3 in scoring. He's been that. So that's just a lovely thing to watch.
Well, when you talk about peak performance and you talk about players that have had that type of trajectory, it's really only been LeBron, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, obviously, and outside of those perimeter players, most players that have been able to reach that have been big guys.
Yeah.
Another big guy that has been able to score, but not necessarily have the peak sustainability of a LeBron, a Kobe, or Jordan, has been a Dirk Nowitzki, who reached 31,000. He's in his 20th year. Now, his scoring isn't necessarily as prolific as LeBron, but the sustained longevity of a player of his caliber, especially with the turn of the league with perimeter shooting, he played in an era where he's been able to play in different eras at different times and still be a valuable piece as a shooter. And now you see the game being more valued to stretch forwards because of him and the emphasis on his skills. So what do you see from Dirk that has allowed him to get to this point?
Dirk is also a special case, right? So Dirk was someone who I guess I never saw as an elite scorer because he didn't hit the 25-point plateau like as frequently enough. So, typically I see the elite scorer as someone who does 25, 27 at least 5-6 times. Dirk typically I think has a 127, but I think he's hung around and been able to score enough. Also, if this was Dirk's prime, he'd probably be a much bigger scorer. Because I think one way the game has changed is the numbers have, earlier we spoke about how guys are peaking or they're breaking the glass ceiling simply because the attempts are more. So elite shooters back in the day wouldn't average any more than 5-6 attempts, right? That'd just be ludicrous. Now you have a guy like Durant averaging 7 threes, have a guy like Melo averaging 7. A few years in New York, you have Harden averaging 9. You have a Kyrie Irving averaging 7. You have Steph Curry averaging 10 a game, right? So I think if Dirk was maybe 24 to about 30, and this was his prime, he'd probably be taking about 7 threes a game with about 2.5 to 3 makes, about 40% clip, and he'd probably had 27, 28 years consistently. So he probably had even more points. So it's interesting. I mean, so I think it's funny how we look at players, right? And this is all subjective because attempts change things. I think guys are taking less shots but taking more threes, which is why the scoring has elevated over the past, probably since about maybe 2014, 15.
Right.
And Steph Curry, I'm a LeBron Cleveland guy, so Steph Curry isn't my favorite player, not because he's not great, but he's the rivalry. But I think Steph has also helped to break that ceiling, right? That no, you can take a lot of attempts and still be efficient and have not be a bad game. Because back in the day, we'd call someone like Steph a bad shot selection, right? Or a player with a bad selection because he takes 10 threes a game. But if you make 4.5, I mean, who's to knock it, right? So It's interesting. So yes, I think bigs have benefited for what Dirk did earlier. But if the game was this way in Dirk's prime, he'd probably be even more prolific scorer. So 31,000 is amazing, but he may be at maybe 34,000 if this was earlier on in his career.
Now, it's funny you bring up Steph because I have this clear distinguished shooters and scorers. Now, Steph is a unique case because he is clearly a shooter, but he's so prolific as a shooter that you have to value him as a scorer.
Yep.
So, for example, his father, Del Curry, one of the best shooters of all time, but he was not a scorer. Now, Steph has those same type of abilities in terms of peak shooting, but his ability to create off the dribble creates more opportunities. Most scorers that we speak about get to the line at a rate that makes up for them not be able to shoot at his level. And he doesn't get to the line a lot, but because he takes way more threes than most take twos, he will make up for that.
Yeah.
So, but then you have a balance of, okay, Clay is a shooter. He's not a scorer. But then you have a player like Kevin Durant, who's also on the team. He's like the ultimate blend because he is a shooter.
Yeah.
He's a shooter. But his ability to create mismatches at his size and then score off the dribble makes him the most well-rounded scorer that I think we've ever seen. Now, some especially in the last couple of years or so, James Harden has kind of jumped into that conversation in terms of who the best scorer is. But I think I will always give the edge
to KD,
Kevin, because what KD has been able to do is, even in OKC as well, he's been able to be efficient while also showcasing high volume. Yeah. As great as Harden is, when he takes a lot of threes, he'll make a lot, but he's not efficient. So Durant will take a lot of threes but shoot 50%, 52%.
Yeah,
but like, as great as James Harden is as a scorer, he'll always hover around 45%.
Yeah, so initially, I don't think I ever saw James Harden get 28, 29 per game. It's amazing. I thought he was a 25, 26 guy. So he's also broken that glass ceiling, right? One thing I'm surprised that I always saw, so Carmelo from year 2 to about year maybe 7 or so was a 47% guy, 47 to 49, which is amazing, right? That tapered a lot after he got to New York. But I always thought James Harden was someone who would do consistently 47 from the floor and about 38 or better from 3. Now he hasn't yet, which is weird. So he's a lot better shooter than he's a better shooter than his percentages would indicate. You think he'd be someone at 38.39%. So it's weird, but I think he takes a lot, and I'm not sure he always takes the best 3-pointers, right? But again, I think that goes back to your point where guys are shooting so much that they're making up for things that players once lacked. And James is an interesting case because James' field goal attempts aren't that high. They're in the 20 range, right? But the threes are in the 8 to 9 range, and he gets to the line a lot. So that's what has his scoring so high. So it's a bit of an opposite. So back in the day, AI got to the line a lot, took a lot of shots, but didn't take a lot of threes and didn't make a lot. Well, James Harden gets to the line just as much as a primetime AI. Shoots about 9 threes a game, makes about 3, which is only 33%, but that's 9 points, and he hits the in between and finishes. So that's why James is at over 30 points per game now, MVP locked up. So he's a special case also. He also has one of the best all around offensive packages we've seen. Like in a space, I think anyone at his mercy he can, and I want to compare it to Kobe, but it's different. I think Kobe was a bit more tactical and like mechanical. James Harden is like a smaller guard flair with bigger guard strength and more range. So it's just kind of amazing how he's able to take off the dribble or back a player down or just have it with them. So he's quietly, he may be the best one-on-one player in the NBA currently. Kyrie had the best moves, of course, but in a space, James could mess you up and James can really pile on points. Kyrie typically won't average more than 25, 26 per game, while James scoring can get you 31 to 32. So I think he's the best. He's the most explosive one-on-one player in the game today.
I want to go back to your Carmelo point in terms of the window that you saw for him in terms of efficiency, because I think that's more along the lines of what Kyrie is doing now, just not at that volume.
Yeah.
He's an efficient 47, 48% shooter at his size. And he has shown the propensity to be explosive in certain games. So he'll have a game against Portland where he scores 55 or a game against the Spurs where he'll score 57 and show you what he is.
Yeah.
But the difference between the elite scorers that go to the 27s, the 28s, over long stretches of time is more or less the durability. Yeah. So you'll see the differences between him and a Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask somebody who's a better scorer, to a man, they'll always say Kyrie because of the offensive package. To your point about one-on-one
Yeah.
just in a vacuum, he can make probably more moves. But if you ask me about who would I ask to carry the scoring load over long stretches of time, especially both of them do it in high leverage moments, but it's just about how long they can do it for the totality of a season.
Dame is more
Damian Lillard
durable.
does it way better.
Yeah, more durable. Dame has a 27 for sure. Now the percentage between them are different. Kyrie's at 48, 49, Dame's at 42, 43. But in the playoffs, percentages are going to drop anyway, right? And I may trust Dame to get me 27 to 31 every night as opposed to a Kyrie. Kyrie's efficiency is kind of scary. I think you said it best. Kyrie's like a mini Kevin Durant. He's a 6'2" player. Not athletic. Percentages are 49. From three, he's at 40%, right? That's just things we've never seen. And he shoots a lot with the dribble. So he's also not a high volume his attempts aren't high volume. He typically would never average more than 20, 21 attempts, right? So that's probably why he would never get to a 28, 29 per game. But for what he does to be in the 18 to 20 range, to be at 49% from the field and 40 from three, that's a special thing as well. But yes, to your point, I am in agreement that I think Dame is, I think if you mean talk about getting buckets and prolific scoring, regardless of field goal percentage, Dame, I think, is more likely to get you the higher points per game over long stretches more than a Kyrie. Because we've seen big scoring outputs from Kyrie, but we've also seen games with 21 or 23, while Dame, we see him continue to push at 27, 25, 31, 38 over time. So, yes, Dame is amongst the most prolific scorers in the league, and I think he's more prolific than Kyrie. Not as efficient, of course, but I don't think any guard ever is as efficient as Kyrie, but Dame definitely put the ball in the basket more and a more durable rate over such a time.
Now, with Kyrie, especially with his ability to score, we're going to see how he's able to carry Boston when they get to the playoffs. That'll be a good litmus test because a lot of what we've seen for a Kyrie apologist would say, well, LeBron was there. So if LeBron's not there, let's see what he's able to carry. So we got to leave that ceiling there too, see how he performs in the playoffs. But specifically with Kyrie, especially with his ability to finish around the basket, one of the best finishes that we've ever seen, period.
Maybe the best for sure.
Why do you think he doesn't get the free throw attempts with his ability to finish? Like a James gets to the line and attacks consistently. So why do you think Kyrie doesn't get to the line that much?
I think it's so Kyrie's definitely an intelligent, like cerebral player, but I think the free throw attempts, I think, like a conscious effort to put the team in trouble and get them the penalty, right? So I think the AIs, the Wades, the LeBrons, the Kobes, and the James Hardens, I think they drive with the purpose of, finish if I can, but let me get to the line and fill it up, right? I think Kyrie drives solely to finish, right, and solely to score. So I think it's more of it's an approach. I think guys drive with let me put personal defense, right? And maybe we should one day look into the amount of drives and attempts, right? Because I think the players get to the basket more than him, right? I think Kyrie does a lot more of the dribble shooting than the rest of those guys do. I think those guys make a conscious effort to wear teams down and stop the clock and put points on the board while the game clock is stopped. So Kyrie, with his dexterity and handle, he should be easily at least 8 free throws a game, and he's never been, and he's never will. While other guys have been at 10 attempts per game, for sure. Similar to Vince Carter back in the day. Vince Carter could dunk on anyone, right? And he would always evade contact somewhat. You know what I mean? So I think that's more of a Kyrie thing. So you had the Kobes and the AIs who would get to the line with Vince, right? Even though Vince is more of a liability, Vince is more likely to finish over someone and finish through contact than those two guys. He never got to the line the same rate as them. And that's why his scoring was never where those guys were. Because he definitely had the attempts to, but they got to the line a lot more. And I think they made more of a conscious effort to get to the line. So.
Now, you brought up Devin Booker earlier. He actually just reached 4,000 points, the third youngest in NBA history to reach 4,000 behind LeBron and Kevin Durant. Now, that has to do more so with age rather than quickness. Because in terms of games, Kevin Durant and LeBron were way quicker than him. But I think that adds to the ceiling as well because most players coming out in the early 90s and even the 80s, they went to school for 2-3 years. They're coming in the NBA at 21.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, okay, you get in the NBA, you need a year or two to get used to the NBA. So then when you get comfortable, like really in your zone, you're 23, 24. So now from 23 to 30, that's your peak window, right? Well, now you have players, especially with the one and done rule, which we'll discuss. But with the one and done rule, and then LeBron's era of coming out of high school, and Kobe and KG, those guys had 18, 19, 20 to kind of find their way. LeBron is a special case because at 18 he was already ready.
Yeah, at 19 he was just already a superstar.
At 27 a game, 27, 7 and 7. Yeah. But even with the Kobe and a KG and a Tracy McGrady, even if you gave them 3 years of getting comfortable, by the time they do it, they're 21.
Yeah.
So now, especially with the one and done rule, you're seeing that way more. A Giannis who is 23 right now, which is scary. He's only 23.
Exactly.
To be at 23 and finally reaching the 25-point plateau, and he's exceeded it to 29 a game.
I'm surprised, definitely.
We could just imagine what he'll be at 25 to 27, 27 years old. So when you think about that and where the game and how the game has changed in that regard, what players do you see kind of pushing that 30,000-point plateau, or do you think that it'll slow down to a certain degree?
So, 30,000 I think is tough. I think when KD was in OKC and he was a guaranteed 28 a game for 8-9 years, I think we saw him doing it, but now he splits like shots and points with some other guys. AD is scoring at a ridiculous rate, right? Well, the issue with him is health, right? So and he's been on tear since the Marcus has been out. So if he can continue this and stay healthy, he can also, I think, push that 30,000. Because I think the thing is though, so over time, right, to get 30,000, you need 15 years of 2,000, right? So some years you'll be under that, right? But some years you'll do 2,200, 2,300, right? AD misses too many games throughout a year to really – because if you're at 28, that's already well over 2,000 per year, right? So AD misses a lot of games. So I would call it – I would say AD would be a guy to do that if too many games were missed. Giannis now, with this age, is kind of scary. I want to see for how long can Giannis guard this 28, right? Because if he can do from 23 to 30, then he's maybe a guy who could maybe not get 30, but hover around it. But right now, I would say KD, of course, he'll probably get there. Because KD is at 20,000, right?
Right. He passed. He's around. He hit 20,000 last year, so he's pushing close to 23, close to 22, 23 now.
Cool. And LeBron has about 5 years on KD in age, right?
Right.
6 years. So by the time KD's 33, 33, 34, he should be approaching that 30 clip. So he'll get that. But young players, Devin Booker is scoring a lot early, right? I think more so than we thought. So last year he did 21.
Yeah.
But last year was year 2.
Yeah.
So he's in year 3 now and he's at 25.
Right.
So so if Booker keeps coming, let's see his ceiling also. If he could get from 25 to 28 from age now to maybe 29, 30, then I think he may sneak up on the folks and surprise some folks as how much he's able to score over time. So I think AD and Booker are the two most likely under 25 candidates to go for that, to go toward that 30,000, that 30K plateau.
Now, to your AD point, we spoke about like LeBron and Dirk and Kobe, but one thing that has changed is the big man dynamic.
Yeah.
And the difference between a perimeter player and a big is that, in my eyes, especially how the game has evolved, with the perimeter player, they're always going to have a greater impact on the game because they always have the ball. So as a scorer, as good as AD is, he's always going to have to be over-reliant on somebody getting him the ball, as opposed to a James Harden or a Russell or a Giannis who who Giannis and AD are similar in size, but because of the skill set and what they do, it's a difference in terms of how often they have the ball. So do you think that will affect AD to a certain degree, or do you still feel that AD will have the outside chance of getting to 30?
I don't think so. AD hasn't had a great guard yet. He has some good ones, right? I like Drew Holiday a lot, but he hasn't had a great guard yet, and he still managed to get to 28 over the course of the last 2-3 years. So I think he still has a good chance regardless of who's there. I think the difference though is the impact on winning, right? I think when a guard has the ball in their hand, they can do more without being reliant on someone else. I think since bigs have to rely on someone, that impacts winning more so than actually scoring. So yeah, I think AD can still get there. I just don't know if his scoring will be as impactful towards win as a player like a LeBron was, or KD was, or Russ is, because there is that the fact that I can just go get it and on myself, as opposed to I gotta wait to get the ball from someone, right? So a lot. I don't want to say it gets away from that, but that is a bigger task than just having the ball in your hand all the time. But it works both ways, because you could also say it's more pressure on guards, right, to do stuff because they have to facilitate, get people involved, and be the scorer, right? So bigs have an easier job, but they also have to wait for the ball as opposed to a permanent player.
So specifically to that point, you have do-it-all players that are really following that mold of LeBron. It's kind of like, especially with the responsibility. It's sort of like what Peyton Manning did in football with the audibles and changing the calls at the line. Now, when quarterbacks come out of college, they're expected to be have that level of cerebral play calling.
Yeah.
So as a basketball player and the levels of what LeBron has reached, 30,000, 8,000 rebounds, 8,000 assists, I'm not sure we'll see that level of prolificity throughout for a while. But in terms of 25,000, 7,000 rebounds, 7,000 assists, which is only him and Oscar Robertson have reached, do you see any players that might touch that?
Well, Russell Westbrook, he's been on a tear, right? Russell Westbrook on our numbers for the past 4 seasons has been better than LeBron. Not scoring, of course, but his assists and rebounds have eclipsed anything LeBron has done. So yeah, if Russ can stay healthy like he can, Russ had the big injury a few years ago, but hasn't slowed him down. His issues, he's hyper athletic, so let's see how his body looks in 5 or so years. But if he continues at this rate, especially because every year he's easily at 25, 8, and 8, like easily. He last year the triple double. This year he's flirting with it again. He probably won't get there, but he'll finish close. So yeah, if Russ can sustain this for the next 6 seasons or around it, yeah, he can reach that plateau, because he's accumulated triple doubles over the past 3 years at a scary rate. Already way past LeBron for career numbers. And as we know, triple doubles accumulate very infrequently throughout the year. Although that has increased, players get it way more often. So LeBron has 13 already this year, but just as a whole, triple doubles don't come as easily, right? If a guy gets more than 10 in a year, that's a big accomplishment, right? So for a guy to routinely be over 15 is just like, whoa. So yeah, if he continues this, granted he stays healthy, he'll always play at least 75 games. He can be in the running for that 25, 7-7 for sure. He can do that.
Now, in terms of hyper athletic guards, you don't necessarily you haven't really seen that outside of Derrick Rose, and unfortunately for Derrick, it's a cautionary tale in terms of what injuries can do to a player. So you have to kind of value what you have when you have it. But to see where his career has gone, it's very difficult at times to project what a player would be, because when you have the youngest player in NBA history to win an MVP, he led a team to the Eastern Conference Finals. He had checked every box of an up and coming superstar that you might see.
Yeah.
And then it kind of went downhill. In terms of what his career was and what it actually became, what did you see from him in terms of at that moment? What did you think his career would become in terms of scoring, assists, and just all around game?
So Derrick Rose is around the same age as us, right? So he was born in 89, 90. So he would be about 28 now. I think maybe he'd be in the running for the best point guards in the NBA, right? He was never the best facilitator, but the MVP year, he does have a 25 and near eight assists. So I think he was a guard who may just get 8 because he garnered so much attention. He was always really comfortable and the game was at his pace. So just like a Brendan Roy back in the day, right? Like Brendan Roy was a great player, like not super prolific, but the game was always at his pace, right? And Derrick Rose, although like blazing speed, the game was always at his pace. He never looked out of control. I think he could have been like a better like floor man to getting guys involved. But I think as he got more comfortable, that's something that could have changed. So I think Derrick Rose could have been a perennial 26, 7, and 5 guy. Hayden I got injured, right? And he also led his team to a lot of victories. Wasn't a high volume shot attempt guy. The 3 would have probably came around. Wouldn't have been great probably, but he would have probably knocked it down at a rate from 35, 37%, or maybe 4 attempts. So yeah, Derrick Rose I think would have been the running for the best point guard in the NBA had he not gotten injured, right? Would he has been as good as Russ? Well, it depends. Numbers wise, no. I don't think he'd ever had Russell's numbers, but would he have been looked at as more of a winner? Possibly because he is in the Eastern Conference, and his team would have probably averaged more victories per game. So yeah, he would have been right out there, I think, with Russell and 7 argument for the crown for the best point guard in the NBA.
Now, specifically with what Russ has become as a passer, in terms of how I think more of that changed when he realized how good he was at getting triple doubles and accumulating them. So I think he focused on developing his game as a facilitator more to complement all of those extracurricular things as well. So it kind of went hand in hand with that level of development. But to Derek's game, even though he didn't have the numbers that Russ had assist-wise, he was always more of a willing passer when they were younger.
Definitely.
But I think even though he didn't necessarily have the numbers, he racked up a lot more hockey assists than what Russ does now. Yeah. Russ has more hockey assists now because he trusts Paul George to make plays or Raymond Felton to make plays. But normally, and you can check his usage, he's normally the player that starts the possession, ends the possession, in terms of creating offense. So to that point about Derek, he was never necessarily a selfish player. He to your point about his pace and his poise, he was always putting his teams in positions to rely on him, but he didn't necessarily force it. And I think that was the beauty of his game, despite how reckless he might have looked.
Yeah, definitely. I think the term for him and Brendan Roy was like low maintenance stars, right? They don't necessarily need a lot. They don't take a lot of attempts. Maybe they don't get 8 to 10 assists per game, but they get enough and they get guys involved enough to win games. So yeah, I think that's the lane that Derrick Rose fell in. And I think the thing is we don't see a lot of low maintenance superstars, which is what he was headed for. Because had he been 25, 20 years old, averaging maybe 28, 7, and 5, then undeniably so he's a superstar, right? With an MVP in the resume already, and those numbers, he'd have been a superstar, right? He was headed for that. It's a kind of sad thing to see his career fall off because who knows? He at this age, this would have been his athletic peak. Maybe he's a little more muscular. Maybe he's faster, stronger. Who knows what we would have seen, right? Because he's another one. And this is like insignificant because it's just like aesthetics, right? But Russell, of course, dunks more frequently. Seems more explosive. I'm not sure if he actually jumps higher than Derrick Rose. He just gets dunks more frequently. So it would have been cool to see like what Derrick Rose turns into, like how he puts it together when the mind matches the abilities of the body. It's a beautiful thing, right? That's what we saw from LeBron and Mike and Kobe as they got older, right? We saw that they were like everything's just perfect now. I mean, they understand the game a lot. They're like high IQ basketball guys, and they're like physical freaks. Although Kobe isn't quite on the same athletic level as LeBron and Jordan, but Kobe had just the willpower to make it appear that he was as much of the freak athlete as there were. But yeah, it would have been cool to see what happened with Derrick Rose. I mean, when he figures it all out, because he was really good, but he was also still really young. So unfortunate thing, but yeah, I think D Rose could have been amongst those upper echelon point guards in the game today.
Now, I saw a graphic the last 2 days ago that showed a young Chris Paul and a young Darren Williams. I think it ties into the trajectory of young point guards, Russell and D Rose, and how their careers diverged at a certain point. And when you look at one compared to the other in the same draft class, it's not close. The same can be said for Darren and Chris Paul,
out the league,
especially with the longevity that Chris has had for multiple teams, and how his game, despite how the game has changed, his game has remained the same and still been applicable to any era. But I think specifically with how careers changed, looking at what Darren and Chris were when they were younger, that argument, you were almost splitting hairs to a certain point, and now 2018, it's like Darren nowhere near Chris.
Yeah, don't bring it up. Yeah, it's interesting, right? I was always a Chris Paul guy. I thought he was a better. I thought he did more overall for his team, but it was close, right? And Darren Williams, I think, worked really well for Utah, right? Jerry Sloan pick and roll system for forever. I think his game and his ability to shoot the ball, especially off the dribble, really worked well for what the Jazz were doing at a point. So yeah, it was at one point they were neck and neck. I would never have Darren Williams ranked over him in the bigger things. But they were really neck and neck at some point. So it's just weird to see how things change. And if you had to question that, you would think that Darren Williams with the body type and shooting ability would have more longevity than Chris Paul, who's not small but smaller, probably more susceptible to injuries and stuff. But CP's game has stayed the same, and it's to the point where in some spaces, maybe some folks overrate him and some folks underrate him, right? Because his numbers aren't exactly eye-popping. He has a special impact on winning, although his teams have never gone far in playoffs. So I think he's just been a really great player that sometimes it's hard to know to what level you appreciate or undervalue him. But yeah.
Right. Now, for what Chris has added to the Rockets at this point, they're neck and neck with Golden State in terms of best record in the league right now. And for their confidence, I think if they're able to get home court, it will only boost what they're trying to accomplish going into the Western Conference playoffs. But what type of value do you think he added to what Houston has already built from last year? What does he bring to them that makes them as lethal, or do you think it's just more of a compliment of what they already are?
I think compliment of what they already are. He's a special floor general. He brings someone who can play make in addition to James, right? Because I thought that moving James to the one was a little weird. I think you gave him too much responsibilities, right? So James is somewhat alleviated. I'm just interested to see what happened in the fourth quarter and in the playoffs, right? Because both players, as great as they are notorious for kind of not coming up as big in the moment as they should have, right? So I don't know, because Chris Paul is a big shot maker, so James Harden has been as well. But you wouldn't necessarily take James Harden off the ball late in the game, right? Because you want him to move. So is Chris Paul's role negated at that point? I had to see when things get tough. I think the good thing is that at the point where James decides to get his, you still have someone who can get other guys involved. That's what it helps at. But I think right now it's up in the air. We have to see when games get tough late, if they resort to things that folks probably saw as problematic, because you do have two ball dominant guards, or do they still work this great two-guard chemistry that has propelled them to the number one record in the Western Conference? So I think that's something that we got to wait and see. It looks great right now. It's working out great, right? I typically thought that you probably don't need two guys who are 10 or 9-10 assists per game getting guys, but it seems to have worked now, right? But I want to see how much pressure Chris Paul alleviates. How much of James Harden's pressure is alleviated with Chris Paul once things get tough in the playoffs?
Well, ideally, you would be able to put them in natural positions.
Okay.
The high leverage moments gets, because it's to your point about Chris, he's a willing big shot taker and maker.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, specifically with those Clippers teams,
yeah,
when they got real and when they got in high leverage moments, he was the only one that could take those shots and create those shots.
Yeah.
When really his natural fit is to facilitate.
Yeah.
Like ideally, if Blake was a go-to scorer, similar to what Anthony Davis is, on those Clippers team, they would have been able to compete better in high leverage moments.
For sure.
So if you put Chris with Harden, you're hoping that Harden can be the go-to scorer without having to worry about facilitating all game for 3 straight rounds, trying to get them to the finals. You're hoping that in the high leverage moments, specifically with the pace that they play, the team you go against will be tired and you can generate the fouls, get in easy free throws, and that'll take that pressure off of what Chris does, specifically with creating open threes and things of that nature. But the one thing that I will say is that when the game slows down, how will they execute? Because a lot of the guys that were making shots last year, when it came time to defeat the Spurs, or even in some moments during the Thunder series, those same guys weren't making threes. Yeah. So you're saying now that, okay, Luke Baamute is making threes in the regular season, but is he going to do that in the second round against a Minnesota or OKC? Is Ryan Anderson going to be able to create enough space to get shots? Because last year, the same shots he was getting in February, he couldn't get in May. Yeah. So it's those type of things that we'll have to see, specifically with a matchup. Now, because of Golden State's barometer for the league in terms of their pursuit of the championship, it's very difficult for people to really believe in other teams.
Yeah.
For a 7-game series, you might catch them a game every couple of months here and there, but you have to beat this team 4 times out of 7 games in 2 weeks. So it's gonna be interesting to see. In terms of the East, we spoke about LeBron at length and his impact as a scorer, and it's interesting we're talking about milestones because on this day 4 years ago, he actually scored 62 points.
Wow.
In Charlotte, and then within the same week, Carmelo scored 62 against Charlotte. So that's a whole nother thing. We go back to the rookie year, similar things when they scored 40. Yeah. LeBron did it first, and then Carmelo came back a couple of days later, scored 40 as well. So they've always been connected in that way. But in the East, what Cleveland has done over the last 3 years, because of what LeBron adds, they've always been head and shoulders above the Eastern Conference. But there's been some slippage. Yeah. Kyrie Irving's on Boston now. He's carrying his own team. So LeBron has been left to kind of work through 2 different type of teams within 1 year. So what do you think Cleveland will have to face in terms of what the Eastern Conference brings?
Yeah, so when they made those trades, folks were excited. I like them. I don't know if I love them. I think it helps, but not sure if it's as big as folks have made it, right? My biggest concern with the Cavs possibly is Kyrie is such a dynamic playmaker, right? And more so for scoring, but just having the ball in his hands is just a scary sight for defenses. I think the fact that he now lacks that prolific playmaker, I think hurts the Cavs for sure. I think they have enough to get past the first 2 rounds. Boston seems scary. Boston has almost slipped. I think when it's all said and done, I trust LeBron against anybody in the East currently. I've never been too critical of a Kevin Love because I always thought that although he didn't play up to what we thought he'd do, it was always weird going from number 1 to number 3 guy, especially in the context of being a big, right? You got to wait for the ball. It's a thing where if you're not hitting shots early, you may not see the ball again because you got Kyrie and LeBron, right, who definitely have first and second dibs. But I think this year, as the defined number 2 guy, he'll be better than we've seen in any playoffs in the past. So I think the Cavs' chances are well. I think the Cavs get out the East again. I think the young guys, I think they do pretty well in the moment. They will. They'll be excited being players. They'll be young. Clarkson looks like he's a guy like ready for success. Rodney Hood, I like his skill. He's still struggling with like looking comfortable at some point. Larry Nance is really high energy, so I think that works well. And George Hill has been there before, so I think when it's all said and done, I think they'll mess around the right time. Unfortunately, they'll probably not win more than 52 games at the rate it's looking at, but numbers don't matter. In June, they'll probably be in the finals again. Does he have enough to win it? That depends who comes out the West. If Golden State comes out the West, then it may be tough. If someone else comes out, then I think LeBron could be looking at a 4th championship possibly, right? But I think with all said and done, the Cavs, they do good in the East. I think Boston isn't ready yet. I think Kyrie still got ways to go, though. He's fantastic. And an injury to Hayward sent them back. but I think there'll be a competitor for years to come. But as of yet, I still have I think the Cavs have enough, and I think playoff LeBron is still ridiculous enough to beat any team in the East nearly single handedly.
So, do you put any stock into what Toronto has, developed this season? Much better bench, more at least in the regular season. DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry are getting together and really pushing for that number one seed in the East. Boston is still in the picture, but what Toronto has established over the last 3 weeks or so is really, threatened what Boston had planned in terms of being number one in the East. So, do you take any stock into what Toronto has?
Toronto's playing well. I like DeMar a lot, but I think when it comes down, their elite players are still pale in comparison to LeBron, and they both haven't put together a convincing series against LeBron as of yet. I think LeBron still has the Raptors number. So
in terms of mental edge,
yeah,
I would agree with that. That's one of the thresholds that if they want to have any type of proving ground to themselves, they have to defeat LeBron if they ever come across him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what DeMar said last year was kind of self-defeating, right? About
if we had LeBron,
you'd win. There's 29 other teams saying it as well, right?
Right.
I like them again, like DeMar, but I think LeBron just has the mental edge over most players in the Eastern Conference. Probably besides the Kyrie Irving. So.
But for the up and coming teams, before we wrap up, just in terms of up and coming teams, specifically in the East, because you have, the 76ers with their young nucleus. We spoke about Giannis and what he brings to the table. So obviously he's putting Milwaukee on the map. Is there any up and coming teams that you think might threaten for the future supremacy of the conference?
I think Philly. I think without question, the process has been trusted and they're running right. I think Ben has been terrific this year. And B talked a lot when he wasn't playing basketball, and you wonder what he happened. And B is easily a top 3 big in the league, right? I think behind Boogie and AD. I have Embiid over Towns right now if I had to choose. So I think they'll be good. I think if what maybe they may have to look into is a prolific scoring perimeter player. Maybe Ben gets there, or maybe he doesn't. And right now, I'm going to say he won't be quite as prolific, right? People have him in his mini LeBron kind of mode. I think he'll be a really good around player, but I don't see him as a takeover kind of perimeter guy they need. Fox hasn't played all year. We got to see how good he is. But yeah, I think they're all under 2023. I think they have time as long as they, the ego stay in check. I think they got something special building. Philly's been a long time. So I think they'll be a monster contender for years. I do think they do need someone who can just say, let me go get it, right, or guard. So, yeah, I think they're cool.
So, Rookie of the Year, who you got?
So, yeah, I think we differ on this, right? You have Ben Simmons.
Right.
I got homie from Utah.
Donovan Mitchell, who just put on a great performance last night against Minnesota. 20 points in the second half.
Yeah, I get that Simmons is in the playoffs. His all-around numbers are amazing, but I think especially early there's something special about scorers, right? Donovan has been fearless, and we didn't expect this from him. And I'm not sure early on if he was in the playing time he deserved, but it seems like around like December he just hit a switch. He got a 40-point game as well. Utah maybe won't make the playoffs. They'll be in contention though, and if he can do that, right, because as good as Ben Simmons is playing, he does have a top 7 player in the Eastern Conference playing along with him. Right, so I think that adds to what he's doing, and it helps that that person complements his game pretty well. But Donovan, I think, is the guy. He's lead them. He doesn't look like a rookie. So if Utah can hold on, I mean, and crack the playoffs, I think Donovan deserves it. And I'm not sure it's close for closeness' sake, but I think he should clearly get it. The NBA doesn't typically do co-rookie of the years because LeBron and Melo would share that. So yeah, I like Donovan to get to the award. I think he's the rookie of the year. Also, this is Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons was a red shirt, so that's also a little different. You know what I mean? So I got
Well, one thing I will say is that the NBA has, in the past, done co-rookie of the year. The last co-rookie of the year that we've seen was Elton Brand and
Francis.
Steve Francis. But in terms of the redshirt rookie of the year, we go back to Blake Griffin
Yeah,
in 2011,
yeah,
and he actually did get it.
yes.
So and many might have said if it wasn't for that, John Wall would have got it.
Had a terrific
So
16, 8, and 4 year, definitely. But I think in this case, Blake was so far better than anyone else that it didn't
right.
make sense. I think for the fact that Donovan had been neck and neck, when you add in Simmons being in his second year of seeing how things work, getting some practice in, and Donovan's team being on the bubble of the playoffs, I think Donovan should take that home if things work out that way. If not, if Donovan misses the playoffs, then yeah, I'll give it to Ben. But if you can lead a team to that, averaging this near 20 points per game, which is also like a plateau for a young player, a young guard, I think Donovan should take that home.
Well, we will see, man. Frank, I want to thank you for your time. This is an edition to Ask Isaiah. We'll have Frank on in many more occasions, especially with March Madness coming up and the NBA playoffs on the way. 19 games left in the NBA and a lot more going around in sports. So this is Ask Isaiah. Frank Teah, thank you for your time. We'll see you next time.
It was a pleasure.